All right, we're going to start the timer because I won't keep you guys long. But let me start by asking you this. When I say crime and safety, what does that mean to you and your department specifically, and what grade would you give your department right now? I'll go from my left to right.
Okay, well, the most important thing is that our citizens, not only that they are safe, but that they feel safe. That perception issue is a big thing. And that helps sell a city. It helps get people moving into town. So it's not just the actual safety, but also those perceptions. And so it's really important that we're out there, that we're visible. We've actually changed the markings on our cars because some of the feedback that we got in the citizen survey was that they didn't see enough cars. And we know they're out there. I mean, the GPS is tracking them. We know they're there in the neighborhoods, but we kind of had low-profile cars, so we've changed up the paint a little bit to make them more visible and just make sure people know we're out there. And I think we deserve, I'll say an A- because nobody can score an A. But I think we're doing a pretty good job. The citizen satisfaction surveys for Overland Park are really high when it comes to our citizen safety.
Crime and safety, yeah. Wow. I mean, that's what we do every day. And I think the issue with Kansas City compared to maybe some of my neighbors is that the crime part might outweigh the safety issue for us, right? Whereas some of the other cities can work a lot more on safety. We work a lot more on crime. And for the people out there working on crime, the people in the department, I would flat out give them an A. They work tirelessly every day to make sure that this city and what happens in this city, we try and make it as safe as possible for everyone. But let's face it, out of all the surrounding areas, Kansas City has its biggest challenge, especially with an increased homicide rate that we're seeing this year.
I have to agree with Chief Donchez from the perspective of the perception of crime is as important sometimes to your citizens as the actual crimes themselves. We're fortunate. We sit just south of the Kansas City metropolitan area in Raymore. My north city limit is the south city limit of Kansas City, so I get some of that carryover into my community, those crimes, those individuals looking to commit those crimes in my community. We're really proud. We just finished our citizen survey, as Chief Donchez had indicated, got a 95% rating from the people in our community, so they feel safe. They feel safe in our parks. They feel safe in their neighborhoods, both day and night. But you have to work tirelessly, as Chief Smith said, to make sure that you continue to address those things. Right before we started filming, we were talking about people not locking their cars, people leaving things in plain sight, and we continually talk to people in our community about hardening the target. You hear police officers say that all the time. Make it difficult to be a victim of crime, and that's true in Raymore just as it is anywhere else.
I'd echo what's already been said. Johnson County, we've got 17 different cities, and we're blessed with great law enforcement. I mean, we don't have a bad department in the county. Chief John just said it's a matter of feeling safe is just as important as being safe. And as all the chiefs said, our officers are working 24/7, tirelessly trying to make relationships. And that's the key, is that we have good relationships with the citizens we represent and take care of. It's a huge issue. But you got to find that balance between enforcement and community outreach, and sometimes that's difficult to do.
So we got an A- and A, especially for the patrolmen out there. What grade would you give yourself?
I'd have to say A.
Hey,
Hey, man.
they're working hard.
Hey, you guys.
I think our perspective is different, though, right?
Certainly.
Right. Our perspective is we see the people doing the work, right, of a police department. It's easy to turn on the 10 o'clock news and say all this badness is happening, and they don't, they see us responding. They don't see all the work that goes in behind it. Mm-hmm. So I can very much see how someone on that side of the table would say, hey, how are they saying that, right? How does a chief of police say that when there's this much crime in the city? I get that. But every day I get to see the work we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring, he's outside, so I'll talk to him later. Are there problems, and you guys can just chime in whenever you want now. I know we did the one left to right, but are there any problems that you would say is really specific to my department that others may not be able to relate to because it doesn't hit them hard?
Well, I'll jump in first, only from the perspective of a small department. I only have 30 sworn, and I know that everyone has difficulty in hiring, but when I'm down one or two, it makes a huge impact on my department in the visibility that we talked about, being able to provide the level of service that my community expects from me. And so, when you talk about a small department, I came from Kansas City and spent 33 years with the Kansas City Police Department and was used to having, backup right around the corner, and was used to having resources, like helicopters and canines and things like that. Kansas City is a wonderful department, and they do a wonderful job, with all that they're faced with, with the huge metropolitan area and the level of crime as well. But when you're small and you have to, try and be creative in solving problems for your community, it's sometimes a little more difficult than where I came from.
Let me ask you this, Chief Smith. Why should the other municipalities care about what happens north of the river or anywhere in Jackson County? Why should they care about what happens in your jurisdiction?
Well, I think there's a lot of, it starts in Kansas City and moves elsewhere. I think that, when we do a good job, it works as a community. We all do a good job together. I think, a lot of things are the same reason that Chief Zimmerman talked about being a smaller community. A lot of things come out of Kansas City because of our academy, our training, our dollars, our foundation that allows us to try some new things that I'm sure is copied or looked at and said, hey, is this a good investment for our community? And we may have experimented with that first or done things. So I think overall, we all want the same things here. No one at this table wants anything different. They want to make their community as safe as possible.
Oftentimes our viewers tend to compartmentalize. I live in Overland Park, for example, so what's happening here east of Troost or north or south of the river doesn't really impact me. What would you tell your...
Well, I don't think what people don't realize is the depth of information sharing that goes on. I mean, that's all behind the scenes, but we're all working together. I mean, we're members of different task forces, federal task forces, and these information sharing networks, and our detectives meet with their detectives. I mean, there's just a lot of information sharing that goes on, and it's going on behind the scenes. It's not on the news every night, but it's the hard work of the detectives and crime analysts getting that information. So there's a big flow of information that we're all working together. And
the criminals, I guarantee you, don't pay any attention to jurisdictional boundaries. That they are across state lines, they are across city limits, and they're not paying any attention. So that's the reason we work so closely with each other, because we recognize that.
Well, and our citizens, they come here and we go there. I mean, there is no, I don't think anyone's landlocked here. I think people travel to Overland Park and they travel through Kansas City, and people from Overland Park come to the Sprint Center to watch a concert, and, people from Kansas City are going out to Johnson County to do things out there. I think we're all part of the same community, and people want the same things.
Hey, Chris Good is over there. I just want to extend one opportunity to him, because this is his business. It's not by coincidence that we chose this place. It's here along the Troost corridor, which we all know many of the associations with Troost Avenue. They're working to revitalize a lot of this corridor. In fact, unfortunately, his business fell victim to crime. What was it, last month? Come on over for a quick second, if you don't mind. And I just want him to ask one question, whatever that is. And
I guess my question would be, and we talked a little bit offline about it, how much does the vitality and success of small business in corridors, especially such as this, play a hand in what you all do day in and day out to bring eyes and safety to our areas?
It's huge. It's huge to have community partners in areas. And when I was in Kansas City, when I worked in Kansas City, I was the commander for about 3 years at Center Zone, right down the street.
Yeah.
And when a neighborhood cares about the perception, it's going to have a direct impact on the crime that's happening in that area. When you have people that don't care, and the businesses become run down, or they get boarded up, or things like that, you're going to see an uptick in crime in those areas. So, having a vibrant business like this, somebody who cares about the community and is invested, is huge for law enforcement.
Absolutely. It's incumbent upon us to grow our cities and build those areas. Overland Park's downtown. There are businesses popping up. It's growing. We're diverting more resources there. We had some unfortunate incidents about a month or so ago. I had a community meeting to reassure everybody that we're doing everything we can. But I know in Overland Park, like I say, whereas the focus is on downtown and building businesses and getting people in there and apartments, and we all have to work together. Police and community leaders have to work together, and business leaders.
Cool. Thanks, man. Hey,
Can I add one thing?
Go for it, brother.
Because Chris and I were talking before, and we were talking at the front door about this exact issue. I said, we don't change the dynamics of the city without this. It's not the police that change the dynamics of the city. It's everybody else. We just work, we patrol it, we try and bring safety to it, crime and safety, as you mentioned, but the city changes because people like Chris invest in it. And what the police aspect of that is to make sure his opportunity is a success, right? That's how I see us, is we're all here at this table, right, to make sure that happens. But without the attraction here, without the new business, this neighborhood doesn't change, right? It is, people want to come here. That is the key. And how do you change that dynamics? The police don't change that. This business changes. This yoga studio changes it. This, whatever happens in this, it starts and it becomes the new attraction. And that's what changes the city. So without this, I don't think anything changes. I think everything stays the same.
All right. Thank you, sir. How are the smoothies, by the way?
Oh, they're
Excellent.
Yeah, y'all wouldn't say otherwise.
You named it after us, Big
We'll
Chief.
be back. We'll be back.
We all had the big chief, which I don't understand, what that was about. But.
One thing you talked about before he even approached here was community. What role does the community play when it comes to crime fighting?
They're our eyes and ears. We can't be everywhere, regardless if you have a 1,400 person department or you have a 30-person department. We can't be all places at all times, and so we count on the community to report things to us. You hear the campaign, if you see something, say something, that call us if there's suspicious activity, call us if there's something going on in your neighborhood, because the people who live there or the business owners know when something doesn't seem right. They're the ones who can tell us if that activity doesn't belong there.
But in addition to that, to pick up from the earlier conversation, I can't tell you how often we say this, and it falls on deaf ears, but criminals are opportunists for the most part. Take away that opportunity. Our big issue in Overland Park is theft. Theft of vehicles, thefts from vehicles. Those are easy to fix if the citizens would just help us out. Lock your car doors. Don't leave your car running while you're inside. Don't leave your purse or your laptop on the front seat. These are simple fixes because they're mostly crimes of opportunity. Take away the opportunity and they move along. And so we social media, we're putting that out constantly. Come on, help us help you.
One of the things we don't do probably as well as we should is we have a tendency to go call to call to call. And what we have to do is make sure that we're doing positive citizen contacts, and it takes a lot of time to do that. It does. The officer that comes by here should be here regularly and stop by in this business and make sure that there is a partnership going on, that we do care, that we have that relationship that's so important, and we've got to get out of our cars more and meet people more. And when I first started in police work, it was, how many arrests did you make? How many tickets did you write? And we were very directed in what we did. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There has to be a relationship with the community. We have to be partners. And if we don't develop that and take the time to develop that, the whole city will suffer.
I want to add to that. I think everyone said, but I think the community aspect goes not just to policing, it goes to support for law enforcement. It goes to support for your neighbor. It goes to, I always say, strong neighborhoods have less crime. Back when I was a kid, if I was doing something wrong, the neighbor brought me home to my house. I was more scared of them than I was my parents, right? Because if I was screwing up, someone was going to, it was those, we took care of one another. I use an example of a neighborhood in Kansas City who had a lot of issues, and they came together as a neighborhood and they worked really hard. And when they did, there was a lot of police presence in the beginning, but now they handle their own problems. That neighborhood has gotten smarter, stronger. They're well educated in what to do. And our resources for that neighborhood declined, not increased over time, because now they take care of the problem. We don't need you anymore is what I hear. We'll take care of this our own. We'll call the city, or we'll call so-and-so, or we'll call codes. We'll get this cleaned up. You guys don't have to worry about it. So what I'm saying is, when the community is engaged in wanting a better environment for them, whether it is just a police issue or a park issue or a trash issue or whatever, when they're engaged, it makes life easier for everybody, including the police.
Which neighborhood is that? I want to do a story.
Northeast.
Well, and Ivanhoe.
We have a lot of
Yeah, Ivanhoe.
we did one
Yeah,
on
good
Ivanhoe.
point.
When I was here at Central Patrol,
Yeah.
Ivanhoe, and they did exactly what Chief Smith said. You know, they took control and they figured out how to solve their problems. And so police presence went way down. We worked really closely with them, but it went way down because they know how to problem solve now.
One of the first stories we did under this franchise was with Adam and Yolanda Young up Ivanhoe to talk about some of the efforts they're doing. Oh, gosh.
Great things,
Awesome.
great things in the
And
neighborhood.
And now I want to do Northeast now, too.
Yeah, there you go.
You talked about, you know, we often go from call to call to call as law enforcement. Is that because crime? I mean, the perception is crime has gone up significantly. Is that just the perception or is that a reality?
But it's not just crime. I think what the sheriff's talking about is just service delivery. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and what police do has changed in that time. Quite honestly, 40 years ago, if you had a problem with your neighbor, deal with it. But now, we deal with so many of society's issues that, like I say, 40, 50 years ago were not police issues, but they are today. And so crime is one component, but it's just service delivery and the expectations of the community. That has changed over the years.
A lot of the data has shown lately, and I don't care what municipality you're over, it's shown that a lot of the crime victims and crime suspects are young people. We're talking young people between the ages of 17 and 24. These are kids still just trying to figure out life. My question for you with that is, why do we think this target group is so, they always show up in those stats when we come about victims and suspects. What's being done? What can we do to try and curb those numbers? I mean, we just had some of the Worlds of Fun over the weekend involving some young people.
And we've had the plaza.
Yeah.
We know these are issues.
It seems that one target group, though, and not just in Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, Overland Park, Rainbow Park,
everywhere.
throughout, these young people.
But I think back to how much things have changed. Today, a disturbance starts on the phone. It doesn't start, by 6 kids hanging around. It's
on
hey,
social media.
Yeah, do you want to
Social
meet
media.
up at the plaza and bring 10 of your friends? And do you want to meet and bring 10 of your friends? And all of a sudden, we got 100 people going on. And I think the dynamics have changed a lot with young people and how they congregate. And I say to this all the time, there's no different than these kids wanting to get together than there is adults going to Party Cove and their $100,000 boats on Lake of the Ozark or $500,000 boats or whatever they are. I think we all want that get together and have fun kind of thing. I don't think that's changed for anybody. I think the dynamics have changed a little bit, and that's a little bit on, whether it's education, whether it's intervention, whether it's the family dynamics, a lot of that has changed.
How do we police something like that? And I realize that it's not just in your sole responsibilities to monitor something like that, especially with our young people. But how do we police that? They are being more engaged in social media, whether it be Meetup or whether it be let's meet up to fight sometimes, But how do we?
We used to talk about that when I was the commander at Center Zone and I had Westport, and we would talk about, the phenomenon of, thousands of kids, showing up there on Saturday nights, and how is the word being passed? And, one of the things that as we were working with, people in the city council, we were working with local churches, we were working with, other groups, it's exactly like Chief Smith just said. It's no different than, I'm going to date myself here, than, going to the skating rink or going to the movie theater, when I was a kid. They're looking for something to do. They want to be able to see their friends and be seen. You want to get out in your new outfit on Saturday night. But what is this phenomenon that they felt safer in Westport than they perhaps did in their own neighborhoods? And is there the opportunity to provide some safe venue for young people to go to, because it is completely different, and they are handling themselves differently and communicating differently than we did. We could not have put together a group of several thousand, back in my day.
It reminds me of a generational thing because we used to cruise, we used to go to the drive-ins, and that's where all the kids went and hung out. Well, those things don't happen anymore. You see a lot of parents just dropping their kids off at the mall or Worlds of Fun and just unchecked. Because I've got this, and I know I can keep an eye on Junior, but we don't know what Junior's doing. And you get kind of almost a pack mentality when there's too many people and things get out of hand. But, I'm sure they said that about us 30 years ago, we were a bunch of hoodlums. So, you know, it's a generational thing, and it changes. But you know, talk about mental health in young people. We've had some kids in Johnson County kill each other over marijuana. We had one homicide 2 weeks ago over 2 Xanax pills. I think the bad thing is there seems to be a heart issue to me, and I don't know if kids. I mean, I see some of these video games. I'll name one, Grand Theft Auto. You can watch this video game, and if you haven't done it, it will shock you because you can. Not only, it's not just about stealing cars. You can go out and purchase a prostitute, have sex with that prostitute, murder that prostitute in this video game. And what good is that doing anybody? I think it desensitizes our children. I think their mental health is not good. I mean, I watched a video with the kid that was that killed this kid. Watched the video of him being arrested in Olathe, and he was so angry. He tried to literally shoot a police officer as he was driving by. And it just, I mean, the thing that jumped out at me, is there any love? Did anybody ever tell this child that he's loved? You know, the heart was just hard. And he, all the way to the car in custody, he was cussing and screaming at the police officers, bragging how he's going to shoot this officer in the head. And it was, there's something wrong, and you can talk about mental health, and we will later, but I think we've allowed our children, they don't communicate well. They use this for communication, so they don't really know how to communicate with each other and problem solve. Used to be kids would go out and duke it out in the playground, but now we have to arrest somebody if they touch the other one. So we've got to evolve and start taking better care of our youth. You just can't take them and leave them. There's part parenting, there's part the technology that I think is helping to desensitize. Even movies. I mean, the movies are much more graphic, and at some point we've got to say, wait a minute, you know, let's do the right thing for our kids.
Is there something the folks at this table can do different, or the departments can do different to help combat those changing times?
Well, we're trying to engage the youth different in Kansas City. I'll say that. You know, we have different programs. We have the Youth Police Initiative we're working on. We've had some summer camps. We're looking at explorers. We're doing things to try and get. But again, does that get the core group that you want to get, right? Does that change the dynamics? You know, that's always what said. You know, I said to someone about conflict resolution in high schools, right? And someone said, well, why would we teach that? And I said, well, is it more important they live or graduate? Because in some schools, that's a thing, right? Do I care enough? Do I value my life and the lives of others enough to engage in this, or am I just going to act any old way I want to? And so I said, you know, if we taught a class on how you engage when you have conflict, to teach these kids that it doesn't necessarily mean picking up a gun and solving your issues. It might be, we'll talk this out or we'll do other things. But I don't know that children are even getting taught that, right? They are getting taught right back to what the sheriff says or what they see or what they know, not actually good skills, right? They're getting taught some skills, but not good skills. And I think that makes a difference. And I think we can have an impact there. I don't know if as chiefs of police we can do it all, but I think we can say to that people in education, hey, this is important to us.
Well, and as Chief Smith said, you know, you try programs like Explorers or youth academies and things like that, but you don't usually get the people enroll in those programs that are the ones that you really need to reach. And we have a program in Cass County, which is a youth court, and so there are, and I'm sure others do as well, you know, where we have young people who are the judge, they are the prosecutor, they're defense attorneys, but then we are hearing real cases of real young people in Cass County, you know, which are cases that the juvenile court has agreed to divert to youth court. So, you know, on one side, the young people who are getting themselves in trouble are also learning along with the ones who aspire to be judges and attorneys and things like that. So, you know, the program has had considerable success in Cass County, you know, just because it gives the opportunity for those young people who are maybe starting to go down the wrong path, the opportunity to interact with both law enforcement and judges and attorneys, but also with their counterparts who are also young people that are looking to, you know, run the court.
A lot of these young people who are on the cusp.
Yes.
Can go either way.
Yes.
Let's change gears a bit and talk about hiring. You know, in addition to us covering crime, we often cover, hey, this department needs officers. They're having a hiring fair. You guys, it seems like you guys are always in need of officers. Why is that? And I know you guys have heavily pushed to recruit officers, but there's still shortage across many of these municipalities. What's being done? How can we add more to the ranks?
You have the answer to that. Make yourself some money.
Yeah, we'll hire you if you can figure out how we can hire more police officers. I think, I mean, just to call it what it is, it's not a popular time to be a police officer, post Ferguson, and you hear people talk about the Ferguson effect, but young people, and again, it's a generational thing from the perspective of, young people want that immediate gratification. It takes a long time I just sent two of my officers through the Kansas City Academy. It takes a long time to become certified as a police officer, and then you have field training, and it takes a long time to get out there and actually protect the community. And you have young people who want that job and that paycheck. You actually have young people who say, I think I want to be the chief within a year. And I know you all have had those.
Yes, we have.
Because it's not unusual at all with this generation to not only move from job to job, say department to department, but actual complete career changes. I think I'll try this police thing for a while, but then I think I'll go try something else for a while. And so you don't a lot of times have people who are in it for the long haul, like those of us who, talk about being in this for 40 years and staying with it and moving up in the ranks. It's very hard sometimes for those young people to see the light at the end of the tunnel and the sacrifice that you have to make in order to be a detective or to be a motorcycle officer or a canine officer or any of those things that you might have the opportunity to do in a large department. It's just I want the gratification right now, so it's hard.
The other thing, I don't think you can discount this, and I get it, transparency, and that has come about probably as a result of the Ferguson effect, is transparency, cameras, body cameras, social media covering everything, and those are all good things. But I do think it's hurting recruiting because most people can go to work all day, and if they make a mistake, I'm not talking about these bad instances where somebody does something egregious, but a genuine mistake. You go to work and you make a mistake, it's not going to be on CNN tonight. But in this job, with all of this transparency, you can make a genuine mistake and you're going to be all over the news 24/7. And I think that people see that and go, I don't know, I don't want that, or it's not, you can't pay me enough to do that.
When I took over 3 years ago, we were out of a 500-man department, we were 60 down. And we started evaluating our process for hiring people. We had a 40-page application you had to fill out. You lost people after about 10 pages. We put them through physical training. We put them through mental health training. You name it. We try to put these people, people that were prospective employees, through this battery of tests. And then we had this idea that we knew what a cop looked like and a cop act like, and we'd forgotten that this is a hard job. And what we did was we streamlined the process. We started looking at our potential customers, the type of people that we wanted to. And we've been going to colleges, we did the military, and lots of different things, but a segment that we forgot were the people that had graduated from college, went to the coast for their big career. Now it's time to raise kids. And where do they want to come? Kansas City area. It's a great place to raise kids. We got good schools, it's safe. And those are a lot of the people that came back and we got great hirees from. We're up to staff. First time in my 30-year career that we've ever been.
60 down?
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, we've hired over 200 in the last 2 years. And the way we did that, and we haven't dropped our standards at all, but we streamlined the process. We hired our own we created our own polygraphist, so we don't have to schedule. I mean, part of the nightmare of getting somebody hired is it takes 6 months to get them through all this battery of tests. And what we did was, and again, talking about they want that job now, you can't promise somebody a job in 6 months and expect that they're going to be around to take it. not when there's 2.9% unemployment. You got to work for it. And we put our personnel, looked at the problems, they problem solved, and we're doing pretty well. But now, just as with anything else, sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. We've lost some Kansas City, we've lost some Oak Park, and that's okay. As the sheriff's office, we're kind of the resource. We can hire kids at 18 years old and have them be civilian specialists, pay them $19 an hour and pay for their college. So we're trying to build them from the ground up. Sometimes it works out for a career, sometimes it doesn't. But we got to rethink the way we're pursuing people. And we used to have this idea of, well, they'll come to us because we're Johnson County. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to pursue good quality candidates and get them in the door timely. So it's worked so far, and so we're hoping it continues.
We did the same thing with streamlining our process, because we would do the big test where you would advertise and you bring in 40 or 50 people on a Saturday and take a written test and you'd sign up 50 and maybe 30 would show up and maybe 10 would pass and all that, and it was just taking too long in the process. So now we give the test online. If they pass the test, we do CVSA or polygraph. CVSA, they pass the CVSA, and then we do an oral board with them, so they have all three of those parts of their hiring process knocked out in a half a day.
It's much more concise.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Certainly much more concise, and that way we don't play the waiting game and perhaps lose them to someone else.
You're not waiting, waiting
exactly.
months to get processed through.
Let's talk about diversity. When I'm out in the streets talking to people, everyone talks about how representation matters. They want to see somebody who looks like them, someone they can identify with. Do you think your departments represent the people they police? Are they an accurate depiction, if you will?
No, our department isn't. It's not that we don't try. We absolutely try. But I think we have the biggest challenges of especially in the minority community. I mean, I think that community was most vocal against law enforcement. When I had talks with leaders, and I would say, hey, it's hard for you to yell at me that our representation is low and then badmouth law enforcement, right? We're not going to change those dynamics. And what I really need is support. If you want to see law enforcement change, if you want to see numbers change, if you want to see a mirror of the community, then you're going to have to advocate for people to come to law enforcement. Because if you do just the opposite, things are never going to change. And so I think those are good discussions to have, and I think it's a good goal to go to. And we have raised our numbers overall, and with that, we raise our minority numbers. Mm-hmm. If you get more people in the door, you will get all kinds of people in the door. So that's our challenge. We go out every day to try and get more numbers in the door, and we'll get a more diverse group through that process.
Yeah, it sounds like an easy thing to do, but like Chief Smith said, it's difficult. In Overland Park, we have about a 7 or 8% Asian population, and I've met with leaders of the community and said, boy, we would like to see the representation. And they were being honest with me. They said, as a culture, that's not what we want our children to do. We want our children to be engineers and doctors, and so we'd like to help you, but quite honestly, you're never going to see that mirror 8% Asian reflection in the police department, because we're not pushing our kids to be police officers. We're pushing our kids to do something else. And so, those things sound great, but there are a lot of dynamics that play into not being. We should always be trying, and we always are trying. We're hitting recruiting fairs. We're trying to explain to people this is a good job. It pays well. Job security, no doubt about that. The economy's booming right now, but that's not going to last forever. But we pretty much have a recession-proof business here. So we're going to keep working at it, but I don't know if any of us will ever achieve that goal.
Well, Chief Zimmerman, as the only woman here, does that help in recruiting women at all? I mean, does that help play a role?
I don't know if my being a woman, we actually do now have, since I came there 7 years ago, we had no women and we had no minorities when I came there 7 years ago, and now we do, and I'm very happy to say that we do. But I will say that perhaps the real answer to your question is that maybe there are individuals, because The two female officers that I currently have came to us from other departments, one from on the Kansas side and one from a community just north of the Kansas City metropolitan area. And so, feeling like, perhaps this would be a good place to be because there's a woman chief. I really feel like there were other factors that were much more at play. Good community to raise your children in, great school district, and things like that. So people usually will make those decisions much more based on what's true to them, I think, than feeling like they're going to get a better shake from a woman than they would from somebody else.
I think, though, a lot agencies' reputation of do you deal with people fairly, whether it's women, minorities, officers on a whole, I really think that has a lot to play into this, is that if you have the reputation of being a department that's welcoming, department that wants to see people succeed, that's the first start, right? You got to build this on a firm foundation. You just don't build that house overnight. And I think when we as leaders, what we can do is make sure that occurs within our departments. And then that travels, that news travels, right? When you ask, hey, did you like working here? Is this a good agency? That travels. Like when we have people lateral over from other departments to our agency, they then go tell their friends, hey, I've had a great experience. Why don't you come with me? It's the same thing. So I think that matters.
Thank you, Chief Smith. I appreciate it.
Sometimes we just shoot ourselves in the foot. In our case, we're civil service, so you have to take a civil service test before you can even get an application and get at least a 75% on this test. We had the same test from like the mid-'70s, and it had never been validated. So when we wanted to do it online and make sure that they could take this test online, well, it was terrible for diversity. I mean, it had questions in it like, where's your nearest phone booth? Well, these kids don't even know what a phone booth is, and so, it was just, we were out of ignorance, we were shooting ourselves in the foot. So we got the test validated, which was extremely expensive to do, but it's helped our diversity a lot. We're pretty close. We're pretty close so far, but we don't have the numbers you guys have gotten. And Chief Donchez talks about the Asian population. It does. I mean, they want their kids to be doctors and lawyers, and it's in that culture. It's public service is just not high on their list, and it's battles we have to fight.
But it doesn't stop your efforts.
Not at all.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Never.
Mental health. I mean, we hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. That we really do. How does that change how you guys police?
Oh, it's completely different than it was when we started. I mean, obviously, back in the early days before crisis intervention and all of the training that our officers have now, the only opportunity that we had to solve a problem, if you had someone with a mental health issue that was, say, aggressively panhandling downtown, which Kansas City deals with, pretty frequently because that's where the resources are. The only way that you could solve that problem was just to arrest that individual. There was no other way to, and arresting the person, putting the person in jail was not going to solve the problem. It wasn't going to get any help for that individual, but when you have citizens complaining because someone's, panhandling in front of their business and it's very obvious that that person has a mental health issue, we as the police didn't have a whole lot of tools available to us to try and address the issue. Now with crisis intervention and the partnerships that we have with the mental health community to get those individuals into treatment, the mental health court, Jackson County Mental Health Court, and all of those types of programs that allow those individuals, much modeled after the drug court, to get those individuals into treatment. And if they successfully complete the treatment, it's life-changing for the way that we're able to police and get people the help that they need.
I still say, though, that the criminal justice system is the mental health system. There is no mental health system for the most part. We are the answer to that. And to Chief Donchez's point about how policing has evolved over the years and how we respond to everything that in the past would not have required a police response. The person in mental health crisis in the past used to be a medical call. Now it's a police call. I'm just saying things have changed so much, and really this was thrust on us at a point where we didn't have the tools to take it on, right? When funding dried up for regular mental health or the old mental health system, and it was thrust upon law enforcement, we were ill prepared for what was going to come to all of us. I think crisis intervention training, other things have put us in a better place now than we were 10, 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
But the idea is, if there's someone in mental health crisis, who gets that call? 911 gets that call, and the police get that call. And frequently, it's not an arrest situation. This person needs help. They need some sort of medical intervention. They need whatever it is, some sort of casework and some follow-up and all that stuff. But frequently, we are the ones providing that.
So does that change the way we train our officers then?
Yes,
Absolutely.
it has,
Yes.
I
absolutely.
mean, is that a component as they're coming up the ranks, or
Yes.
those that are already amongst the ranks?
Yes.
Do they have? What do you guys do?
Ongoing
Yeah.
training, both in the academy, I mean, continuous training, but in the academy, and then after the officers get out of the academy, ongoing crisis intervention, de-escalation training, all of those things that Chief Smith talked about. De-escalation, because a lot of the time the officers are dealing with someone with a mental health issue. When they're trying to de-escalate the situation, it's not a crime. They're not committing a crime, but the family has just reached a point that they can't deal with it anymore. And so who do they call? They call 911. And so the officers are trying to, in 15 or 20 minutes, deal with a situation that has escalated for years to the point where the family can't deal with it anymore.
But the problem is we're spending so much money on Band-Aids, and that's really what these
Yeah.
things are.
Yeah.
CIT
I
training
agree
and
with
all of that is the Band-Aid. And what I really wish the elected officials would understand is you're going to pay for it one way or the other. We're paying for it on our end with more police resources and more training. And that wasn't the way it was 40 years ago. I'll go back to my time in Pennsylvania. When I started 40 years ago, I think there were about 13 or 14 state hospitals where there was temporary and long-term treatment for people with mental. There's one. Where are all those people now? And where's the treatment for them? It's unavailable. And they're out on the street, and our men and women in blue are dealing with it. And so that's why I say the focus is on the Band-Aid when really the money needs to be spent to solve the root of the problem. And I just wish that the state reps and congressmen would understand that we just need so much more money for resources, beds, places for people to go for treatment so that we're not dealing with them at 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the street.
Or over and over and over again.
Or over and over and over.
We're missing the long-term solution. We're great at the 5-minute fix. We're missing that long-term solution.
Right now, it's my jail.
Yeah.
I've got 800 and plus inmates, and 30% of them have severe and persistent mental health issues. We've got mental health professionals in our facilities, and the thing that we can do, I mean, it's from the way it used to be when first started law enforcement. If we took somebody who was mental, we just took them to our local mental health hospital, which was Osawatomie. That option is not available anymore. They've got a couple hundred beds that are full all the time, so the police officers and the hospitals have to wait extended periods of time to get them there. So they go to jail. And in jail, we can get them back on their meds. We've got a great program where it's like rocket science compared to where it used to be. We've got a mental health professional that comes in, a complete nursing staff. Our officers document their behavior. They get their medication adjusted so the behavior matches what they need to do. But then we kick them out. There's no continuum of care. So we ended up in this cycle. It happens again and again. So we are a lot better than we were, but there's got to be follow-up. And we've got the mental health co-responders that we work with, which help a lot because we've got frequent flyers that we deal with a lot. But it also affects homelessness in a big way. And until we get this idea that we've got to address all of this together, it's going to be an endless cycle.
And I'd put up the 30% that's in his jail wouldn't be there if there was another option. They're there because
right.
some cop made the problem. How do I solve this? The only way I'm going to solve this is with an arrest. That's the only way I'm going to solve this. And so that 30% ends up in his jail because there's not an alternative.
Because there's no other solution.
Right.
So what do lawmakers say when you talk to them about this?
There's no money.
No money.
No money.
It's not funded.
Makes your job a little harder, it seems.
It does. It's frustrating. But we still got to do the right thing.
Right.
And the right thing is to try to leave people better than we found them. And, there's not one chief here that's going to tell you it is not. You can't fix the problem in a half hour trying to get somebody to calm down and de-escalate them and get them back on their medication. It takes longer than that. There's got to be a continuum of care. And if somebody could come in and start working that and working with the people that are having problems, we'd be a lot better off, and it'd be a lot cheaper than keeping them in jail.
And we have community mental health liaisons that are appointed by the governor in Missouri, but our mental health liaison, just for my community, has 3 counties. And so that individual is required to be in all of these different places with all of these different individuals who have mental health issues. So she doesn't have the time or the resources to be able to dedicate that to the individual who's in crisis that needs someplace to go. So they're trying, but it is a Band-Aid.
So amidst all this, I know you guys have success stories. I mean, we highlighted them with Safe KC. But in all seriousness, I have a question for all 4 of you. Since you guys have been top dog, what's been your biggest success, you would say, for your department? What's been your biggest disappointment? We'll start right to left this time.
Oh,
You get to be first.
Yeah, right.
our biggest success is we just started after many years, we just started a drug task force. You know, you see talk about all these auto thefts and petty crimes that are going on. Well, usually those occur when there's drugs in the community. When the recession happened, that was the first part that was cut out of most police departments was the narcotics in Johnson County. And it was pretty much non-existent. So we have got it up and running, and we're going to have a facility going. So I think it's going to be very successful. But it's not just drugs they're after. It's going to be violent crime and that culture of getting out there and working with our regional partners. The frustrating part is it took 2 years to put together. It's just incredible how long it takes in government to get things done. It is frustrating.
Wheels of justice move slowly.
Oh,
So would you say that that's your biggest success and biggest disappointment?
both. Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of our hiring was awesome. I mean, that was a wonderful thing. But you know, that's kind of behind the scenes thing. But just the amount of time it takes to get that ball rolling is slow. And it's not anybody's particular fault. It's just that we have to go through so many different levels, and then all the time and training and equipment purchases, it takes a long time to get it going.
Okay. We've done some pretty cool things since I've been out there, and so it would be hard to point a finger at any particular. We've got our own firing range now. We transitioned all of our vehicles to the safer SUVs. I'm swearing in a canine tonight, so I'm going to have him put his paw on the certificate tonight. Swearing him in at the council meeting, and we are building our own command post, communications command post vehicle that will be ready in the fall. So I think the support of our council and support of my boss, my city manager, that has allowed us to do these kinds of things. I was able to get a raise for all of my officers, so they're coming in at a higher rate of pay than they were before I came. And we've done a complete remodel, so I have a new communications center. We're a public safety answering point for 2 fire departments and 2 police departments, and so doing that complete remodel in the dispatch center was really important, giving those folks a good place to work. So lots of things, that we've been able to accomplish, both for the employees and better equipment and things like that to allow them to do their jobs better. But probably, going back to your question, would be the diversity. The women and minorities that are now there since I've come is probably my proudest. That is not easy. Hiring's not easy, in any of our departments. But attracting those folks, women and minorities, and in a community of about 21,000, and you look really closely at the diversity, and I don't know if anybody else struggles with this. When you're dealing with the 2010 census, the numbers are really not right.
Yeah.
They're a little bit skewed because I know my diversity is much greater, in my community than what the census indicates. But I think, getting those numbers and getting those folks out into the community and allowing our community to see that has been really important, and it's been really valuable because it has sort of, mobilized, my minority community and gotten them, meeting each other and talking to each other, which I think is important. Probably, the thing that has been the greatest challenge is feeling like there are things I want to do and I'm old and I'm going to have to leave. So.
Only as old as you feel.
No, I'm only as old as the code says I am because I'm going to have to retire. I'm going to have to retire. I'm like way older than these guys. But
You don't look it. You're the prettiest one in this table.
Yes, a rose between
That's pretty
two
easy.
thorns.
Chief Smith.
I think our biggest challenge is homicides by far. It's frustrating to watch, as you put it, young people die in our streets, what I feel like for no reason, and that is, to go out there night after night, have the phone ring, and have another person die, and just when you find out the reason behind it, it's extremely frustrating. Okay, enough of the bad. The good things that are going on. First and foremost, after sitting in the chair, I'm impressed by the men and women who put this uniform on every day. And the difference they're willing to make. I think everyone, the trend had been nationally that policing is negative, and like I tell my people, hold your head up high. You help people out here every day. Every day we're helping people. And so I think what they go out and do every day in this city, I think is amazing. I think the dedication and what they're willing to put forth to make those differences, and you've highlighted many of them on your news station. So I think that is the greatest part of the job. Now, do we have programs, adding social workers, doubling our CIOs, our youth police initiative project, our camps, all that kind of stuff, the amazing support I've gotten from the city, all those kind of things add up. But if I had to pick one thing, it's the men and women who do it.
Well, I'd have to say the biggest success, and I can't take credit for it because the bus was headed in the right direction. I just got behind the wheel and kept it going down the road. But the biggest successes have been our relationships. Not only our relationships with our law enforcement partners, because it's this is my third stop, and it's stronger than any place I've ever seen. Those relationships that we have, interagency relationships, are strong. But then in Overland Park, our community relationships, and we continue to work on them and build them, and they're very strong. Our relationships with the African American community, the Latino community, the Muslim community. We work at that, and they've been successful. And so, those are big successes because if your relationships are strong and the communication lines are open, that's the most important thing. And so they've been very good. We've involved in a lot of things. It's going to be before this airs, I'm sure, but this weekend we have our 3-on-3 all nets, no drugs basketball tournament. It's a very good program that we run every year. Big tournament, interact with the youth and the police department and things like that. So those are our successes. The biggest disappointment for me has been our inability to maintain full staffing. We've continued to run in that 7 to 10% down, and the difficulty is when you're running short, something's got to suffer. We're always going to maintain that 911 response because in any police department across the nation, that's the most important thing we do is when somebody picks up the phone and says, I need a cop, we're there. But what suffers? Investigations, community policing, maybe traffic enforcement, because we're not fully staffed. And so some of those things suffer. So that's probably been my biggest frustration since I've been here. We're working on it, hopefully return the corner at some point. But I'm really proud of the relationships that we have with our law enforcement partners and with our community.
I've been given time, Q. So let me ask one last question. I'm just curious. What would, and then we're done. What would Chief you go back in time and tell Patrolman you? Hey, I wish I'd have known this back in my day. Here's, what would you tell the younger you?
Well, when I saw chiefs go in and out of the chief's office, one would come in, one would leave, I swore there had to be something in the paint in that office that must have been affecting their brain because I couldn't understand the decisions that they were making. It was everybody that went
True.
in that office
True.
until I got into that office. And then I realized how different it is. So what I would tell the young me is, you don't know half of what you think you know.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that the times, and I'm sure everybody at this table, at one time or another had a boss that you just thought, I'm not going to survive this. This person is out to get me, or that. But I would say that I learned just as much from the bad ones as from the good ones, because it enabled me to see that that's not the way I'm going to treat people. I'm going to make this a good environment for people to come to work. I want them to want to work here. I want them to want to come to work for me. And that was even before I became the chief. But I think, during those times where you were struggling, where you were a young officer and you were struggling under a boss that you just thought, I'm not going to be able to survive this, that this is good for you. You're going to learn from this, because it's going to make you a better leader when that time comes, because you're going to know how to treat people.
Well, I know any organization is only as good as its leaders, and I know you guys are great, and I appreciate everything you all do in our communities, really, as a worker and employee and citizen of this community. I thank you all. I thank you all for your time, too. The formal part of the interview is over. We're out of time.